Tell me what the hell are you scared of when in the end the only thing
Where's
that's
the
up
love? Right here on
love's
this
the only
podcast.
thing.
Welcome to
Love
Love Drops, where your hosts and One Love ambassadors, Charles and Diane, will share love, hope, and inspirational topics taken from their journey and world events. We will also include on location recordings and special pop up guests from cool places all around the world. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Whether big or small, love never fails. Oh, love it conquers all. Love never fails.
Welcome to another edition of Love Drop Podcast. We are so excited to have this return guest to the show. And I'm going to let Charles bring him to the mic. I'm just going to say, I'm excited. He was so amazing the last time we had him on the show. So I'm excited for where our conversation will go. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to you, Charles.
Thank you, Diane. Our guest today is no stranger to the Love Drops podcast, and he brings with him a wealth of knowledge in the areas of caregiving, health, love, and concern. And with that said, I'll turn the mic over to you, Scott. You have the mic.
Thank you very much, Charles and Diane. I'm Scott Holmes. I'm just south of Boston. I'm an intuitive, energetic healer. And what that means, I still don't know, but I work with clients to try and allow them to ground, to balance, to center so that they can maintain integrity in their life, to be able to make better decisions, to be able to live a better life, so that they can live their true purpose. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you
Thank you
for
for being here
joining
with
us. So, we are talking to you again about caregiving because it is just so wonderful to get that male perspective on the topic. So many times, men are not in that forefront, even though the narrative is shifting, and we have so many men taking care of their moms, their wives, their children, and so on. So it's really great to have that voice and that perspective on this topic. So today we're talking about caregiving, the heart and soul of the matter. And so on the last episode that we had you on, we met Amanda Rose, and she was your daughter. And today you're going to talk with us about your caregiving journey with your wife. So let's dive in.
Well, thank you. We had been married for about 15 years and we were changing doctors and we came to a new practice. Her mother had passed from ovarian cancer years before. He said, "Hey, let's get a baseline. I know you're only 38 years old, but let's get a baseline on you. You're going to get a mammogram." Because at that time it was very early. And she had it and we didn't think much of it. And we get a phone call. We need you to come back in. Came back in, and what had been found was a pencil point tumor up against her chest wall in the mammogram. And it was just an exceptional practitioner who had found it.
Wow.
She had it, and she was stage 3.
Mm.
So she had to undergo chemo, but also they were going to do a lumpectomy, and they could not get clear margins.
Mm.
And so she had a left side radical mastectomy. The doctor would not complete the mastectomy until he talked to her. So she actually had to go into the operating room twice because when she went in, it was for a lumpectomy and they had to perform a mastectomy. And he looked at her and said, "I could not in good conscience just take that without talking to you," which I thought was wonderful that he did that, that surgeon.
Yes.
She went through chemo, and losing her hair, I think, was probably the most traumatic. She had hair down to the middle of her back at the time. She had it cut up to her shoulders. Said, well, I'm probably going to lose my hair. But the act of losing her hair, and I think for a lot of women that I've spoken to, traumatic when it starts coming out in clumps, when it starts doing that. And so she went and she had it basically about an inch. She had it shaved, and to be able to allow it to come out and not be all over the place. Recovering from that was the surgery, mastectomy was really, really tough for her. There was a lot of pain involved. Anybody who's gone through and seen the mastectomies now, they cut muscle, they cut a lot of tissue. There's so much lack of movement, the scarring, the healing process. In speaking with a number of friends that had gone through it that had reconstruction done, how do you go through reconstruction when you're going through chemotherapy and radiation and your body is basically can't heal itself? And here you have reconstruction done that needs to be healed.
Right.
So many women that were in that position, they go through incredible infections because your body cannot fight,
Yes.
they cannot heal.
Yes.
There has to be a better way, by the way. I hope they've come up with it. I haven't heard or seen that they've come up with a better way. But it changed her perspective in mortality. Every year when the mammogram came up, she probably wouldn't sleep for about a week and a half before and worrying about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you have cancer in your life, it never really goes away.
Right.
So she was pronounced, quote unquote, cancer free, even though she had 6 out of 10 lymph nodes involved, and they did not do radiation. At the time, they said, well, we don't think we need it.
Mm.
We questioned it, but on 5 years, almost to the day that she found it the first time, she found it again. There was a lump in the scar tissue, and all of her worst fears came true. She got it again, and we had to go. The second time we went into Boston, we had done it locally the first time. We went into Boston and said, okay, let's go for the best. And it changed her entire way of how she looked at it. My daughter was, at the time, was going away to England her junior year to go away. And she said, I want this done by the time she goes to leave to go to England. She came in and she said, okay, what do we need to do? She was an advocate. She
Mm-hmm.
learned after going through it the first time that she wanted to have a voice in this.
Yeah.
Cancer was not going to beat her. Had to undergo chemotherapy. She lost her hair. She said, that's it. We went and had a wig done exactly as her hair was. She shaved it all off. She said, if I'm going to lose my hair, damn it, that's it. Her hair was shorter than mine, and I'm pretty bald. So she took command of it. By the way, she got the wig and never wore it. She said, I don't need this. Why did I buy the wig? I don't need this. By the way, she had very thin, baby fine brown hair. When she lost her hair the first time, it came back coarse and dark black. The second time she lost her hair, it came back stubbly and white. Not even gray, but white. Second time she lost her hair completely. We were going to a wedding, and I said, you're going to wear your wig? She said, no. Her hair was all of about 3/4 of an inch long, and it was straight up. She looked like in the movie G.I. Jane. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
She got the
Yeah.
haircut like everybody else, and she was a warrior. We went to the wedding, and everybody said, oh my God, you look magnificent. She never wore the wig. She was that warrior. What it did do is it made us stop and think about how precious everything we did was. When
Mm-hmm.
you lose your mortality at a very young age, you learn to appreciate all of the things that you go through. She knew that she was going to be there. She wanted to be there for their wedding. She wanted to be there for the grandchildren. She was not going without a fight. She was not going without a fight. She was a teacher. She taught for 25 years. The first time she went through radiation, she went through Monday through Friday for 6 weeks, standard course of events. She asked the principal if she could leave 15 minutes early. And there were 5 people that took, I only had to take her in one day, but 4 other people volunteered to take her in. So they drove her into Boston. And if you ever know about Boston traffic, you know that it's on a Sunday morning, I can get into Boston in 20 minutes. Any other day of the week, it's an hour and a half.
Wow.
Someone would drive her in. It would take 10 minutes for the radiation and then drive her home. And she did not miss a day of school. She taught throughout that whole thing.
Wow.
And for anybody who's gone through radiation, the first 2 weeks are like, I don't feel anything. Second 2 weeks are like, this is kind of tiring. That third 2 weeks, that last part of it, it feels like you're carrying around an anchor and you cannot move. Yet she never missed a day during radiation. She
Wow.
loved to teach. She lived to teach. She was the ultimate teacher from the time she was young until her dad was a teacher and she was going to be a teacher always. And during graduation, she was teaching sixth grade and they were graduating to middle school. And they had this celebration for the kids, except it became a celebration for her because at that time, I got to talk to a number of her students afterwards, and they said they learned more about life that year because of what my wife went through than they ever had, because she was open and honest with them, much like we were with my daughters and my youngest daughter. She was very open and honest. She would answer any of their questions. And it inspired some of those kids. A
Mm,
couple of them went into the medical field because of my wife. So she was always the inspiration in that respect.
mm,
And breast cancer really affects the biggest part. If you get through the healing and you get to the other side of it, the body image about that, it is devastating.
yeah.
It's absolutely devastating. And for her, just having any part that kind of looked normal, so that she could kind of wear a bra and kind of be balanced. And it was a constant fight trying to figure out what to wear. Getting a bathing suit that would fit a prosthesis was a challenge. We had a friend of ours who sewed in a pocket so she could put her prosthetic in so she could go to the beach. All of those little things that you take for granted
Mm,
with her body image. And she just never felt whole after that. It was a tough, tough part for her. And I think that doesn't get discussed very often or very much. In being an advocate for herself, she went online and she was trying to find a group. And she found a group that was a group of women from all over the country. They were in Arizona, they were in Dakota, they were in Ohio, they were in Florida, they were in Pennsylvania. They were all over. And it was a group of women that on a nightly basis would just get on, and it was a support group because she said, I need support. She was during the summer, so she wasn't teaching, and she'd be up till 1 o'clock in the morning because, of course, you have West Coast time, talking to these women about what was going on. And the wonderful sharing about, here's what I'm doing, this is how I'm reacting, this is how there was a shared community where they could share their experiences. New women would come in and they'd say, hey, I just got diagnosed and this is what they're telling me. And they'd be, okay, girl, you don't need to do this. You don't need to do that. You do absolutely have to do this. And they really comforted each other. They talked to each other. They became a family. And so they kept going. And I would hear her talking to them and they'd be laughing, they'd be joking, they'd be asking about, the kids and the husbands and everything else. So I said to her, find out where they would like to meet. And she said, what do you mean? I said, if you pick a place, I will take care of getting everything together so that we can meet. So we picked Virginia Beach. And so I called down, I did all the homework back before the internet was really big, and got a meeting room and a special rate, and 15 people came together.
wow.
And so we all get in there, we all get in the meeting room, and they're all just kind of standing there looking at each other. And I said, okay, guys, we're going to go around the room and we're going to just tell, because at the time they could only hear each other, they could never see each other. And so as each of them introduced themselves, they'd, oh my God, you're, and they'd come over, they'd give a big hug. And it ended up, it was only a weekend, it was only 3 days. But we did everything as a group. We went to the aquarium. Some of them were still undergoing chemotherapy. Some were undergoing treatments. Some were recovering. They were all at different stages. And someone brought their daughter. Someone brought their husband. Someone brought their son. They came together because it became a family. And it was extraordinary. We would go out to eat. I said, okay, whoever wants to go out, we're going to be here at 5 o'clock, and we have a 5:30 reservation. And anybody who's coming, come along. We got 2 vans. Let's go. So I set that all up so that they would be able to be together, and so they could have that. And Virginia Beach, I don't know if any of you have been there, but Virginia Beach is wonderful. It was in August, and every morning the dolphins would go along the shore, and it was just absolutely extraordinary. And it was one of those once in a lifetime events.
Mhm.
Of those women that were there, 7 of them passed within 2 years of us meeting them. And we went to unfortunately, many funerals. But it was that community that really helped her get through what she needed to get through. And it helped her because she didn't feel alone. And for anybody out there who is going through, whether it's a breast cancer diagnosis or a cancer diagnosis, reach out to a group. Find a group that you can. The American Cancer Society is great, but they don't always have facilities for your kind of cancer, or you don't feel comfortable with it. But nationally, and especially with Zoom now, with all of the devices that we have available to us, you can find a group, not just nationwide, but worldwide.
Yes.
Today, they are in Lyon, France, and I am in Brockton, Massachusetts, in the US. So
Yes.
you can connect, reach out to people.
Yes, I want to just say kudos to you from a woman's perspective for you not trying to fix it or be everything for Mara, because honestly, you can't. And as supportive as you want to be, 150, 200% as a husband, as a man, it needs to be someone that is going through a similar circumstance, a similar situation, because they know the right words to say, the right words not to say, just the time to give a hug, and just they're in it. Like they're actually in the pool with them. And no matter how much you want to be in that pool with them, there's always like this barrier, how you have the little divider in the pool where the high end and the low end, and you're always going to be on the other side of that barrier, because the side that she's on is for the ones that have like breast cancer or just whatever the situation may be. So the fact that you advocated in a way where you were open to, hey, we're going to need some extra arsenal here. We need to get these women together, because that's what's going to lift her spirit. No amount of getaway or nice dinner or flowers or chocolates or whatever is not going to do it like that. That's the best getaway. So I want to say to you, kudos, because I know they say men are from Mars and women are from Venus, but you had a Venus moment there and what you did to pull them together. And I just want to give you kudos for that. Yeah.
Yes, that is a big thing within itself from a male's point of view, to speak about women getting together and talking and being that facilitator to bridge them together, not to try to lead them, but bridge them together on their common causes.
It was amazing to see. They had never met, they had never seen each other, and yet on that weekend that they got together, you would have thought they were cousins. They
Mhm.
knew everything about their families. They knew, and they just embraced that. And that was a wonderful thing. You talked about men being in caregiving. Our doctor, Jerry Younger at Mass General, actually put together the breast cancer part of Mass General. He instituted it, and he was a founding member. And one of the things he used to say to me was, I see the women, the focus is the women, and their husbands are standing there behind them each and every time. They bring them in, they wait, they've gone through everything, they take extra duties at home. There's moms in the bathroom getting sick, the kids got to go to school. All of these things have to go on. One of the things that I found really happens with men is they do not know how to caregive, and they are overwhelmed. It's not that they don't love their wives, they don't love their families, but so many times you see men walk away because they are so overwhelmed.
Mhm.
Some of them have never paid a bill, cleaned a house, cooked
Mhm.
dinner, raised the kids, do all of those things that were never a part of their upbringing or part of their married life. And so you see that separation, which is unfortunate. But
Mhm.
Jerry Younger used to say to me, I see these men and I want to give support to them. It was his desire to do that. And so I went around and looked nationally, and there was one program for men for women with breast cancer.
Wow.
One. And he couldn't get any traction.
Wow.
And I tried 5 ways a Sunday to put things together in any shape I could. And I finally went to the doctor. I said, okay, you want to have things here in Boston? I said, you're going to ask 12 to 15 guys, drive an hour and a half into Boston to talk about their feelings for an hour while their wife is going through all of these, they're going through chemo, they're going through radiation, they're going through just healing. These guys are in survival mode. They don't know which end is up. They don't know where to go, how to get there. And you're going to ask them to share their innermost secrets with a bunch of strangers? They won't even talk to themselves about how they feel. He just kind of laughed and shook his head and said, yeah, I guess you're right. But he said, I'd love to find a way to do that, to be able to support men. I found a way. I did find a way. If you're familiar with AA and the sponsor, you always have a sponsor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, for those men that have been through it with their wives, like I was with my wife, to be able to one-on-one talk to men going through it. A year after my wife died, right afterwards, my best friend I had grown up with, his wife had breast cancer. It was going through very similar. She actually died a year later. But I was able to counsel and both he and his wife in walking through all of this. I would see his wife, and she was the most beautiful, humble lady in the world. And every time she'd see me, she'd end up crying. And I
Yeah.
said, I don't come here to make you cry. She said, no, you're the only one I can talk to. She had 3 boys and her husband, and there were things she couldn't say to any of them. So I was able to be that vehicle for her. But I found that, and I've done it probably half a dozen times through the course of the years, but that one-on-one, a guy will sit down, have a cup of coffee or a beer with somebody, and they'll spill their guts. But in a safe environment, it's very, very tough for men to kind of bring those things out unless they feel that they are in connection.
That is so true. And I just, again, commend you for the mentorship because that's a big thing. When you go through anything, the give back, just that whole give back, especially caregivers, especially from men perspective, because a man can be a caregiver but won't speak of his feelings because men have been tricked by society that you're not supposed to have pain or feeling. You're supposed to be strong. You're supposed to be the strong macho guy, and you're supposed to be able to. You're the fixer. You're the rock. So okay, your wife has cancer or your wife has something. You're helping her. All right, that's what you're supposed to do. So it's just like finding that balance because it's imposed upon you to be that rock and be strong and hold it all up, hold it all together. And so many men can't take that. And so then they leave, just men that leave the situation because, as you mentioned earlier, they're overwhelmed. And it's not that they don't love, they just don't know what or how to do. They don't know
And they
what
don't
to
know how to
do
ask for help.
and they
Exactly.
don't kind of you're talking here and it makes me think about men and directions. Thank God for GPS, Google Maps. You are lost 4 hours out of the way because you don't want to stop at the gas station, because you got it. But this is definitely more pressing. So you were your wife's primary caregiver. And we're talking about what men didn't do, wouldn't do. How did you do it different? How did you handle that? How did you handle being a caregiver? What help did you ask for?
Well, my mom was the ultimate caregiver, and she showed me what it took. When I first got married, my wife told me she apparently already had a child before we had any kids because my mother did everything, and I kind of expected my wife to do that also. That lasted about a week, by the way, into our marriage, before she said, you will pick up your own clothes, you will be doing because she was not having any of it. And I agreed with her. I got married when I was 19.
Okay.
First child when I was 20, 3 children by 25. So when I was 18 years old, I knew absolutely everything. By the time I was 25, I had 3 kids, 3 jobs, and I didn't know which way was up. So it was a learning experience all the way around. So it was love. I had daughters, and I'm going to equate this. My oldest daughter went to Brownies, and they were having a sleepover. And so I volunteered. My wife was home with the other two, and I volunteered to go. I get there, and there were 25 girls, all moms and me.
Mm.
And the moms are looking at it like, what the heck do we do with him? And I'm like, well, I'm here. I'm here with my daughter. My daughter's danced for 15 years, and I was always there. The other dads weren't because they didn't know how to be there. It's just holding space. So by the end of the time we were done with the brownies, the women loved it because I got all the girls up and I took them out so the moms could get ready for the day. And before they ever get up, I went and got coffee and donuts and I put it aside so they could have it. So I was a big part of that. And they actually didn't mind my being there after all.
Yeah. You brought a
And what
different perspective, though. You brought testosterone into the room.
I did. I'm glad you brought that up. I do that on a regular basis. At 50, I started yoga because a friend of mine was a yoga teacher, and she said, "You need to come." I said, "Oh, yeah, you're right, I do." So I would be the guy, right, at the time in the yoga room, and of course, I'd go to the very back corner, hoping nobody ever saw
Oh,
me,
yeah.
getting the side eye, like, oh, okay. And I talk to guys about doing yoga, and they go, "What? That's for girls. That's for women." And they said, "Oh, you go to look at women." I said, "My eyes are closed 90% of the time. What are you talking about?" But the women saw me coming, and they started bringing their husbands
Mm-hmm.
Good.
because I showed up every time. All of a sudden, we have a group of 5 guys that would go normally to yoga class because it was okay. There was another guy in the room.
Right.
So, having had daughters, I was always the unicorn, right? I was always the guy.
Mm-hmm.
I would look at the other dads and say, if your daughter was playing softball or soccer, you would be over there teaching, you'd be coaching, you'd be involved. Your daughter's dancing. Yes, you can't teach her how to dance, but you can be there. And you asked, how did I, with Maura going through all of this? I showed up, I held space. I didn't always know how to make her feel better, or I didn't always know the answer, but I always let her know I was there.
Yes.
And that made all the difference.
Absolutely.
How many women go to the doctor's appointments by themselves?
Right.
That's so true.
And I really advocate people who are going through any kind of serious illness, you need to have at least one other person there taking notes because the doctor says something and in your mind you're reacting to it. You got all these feelings going on. You're trying to think about, well, what does that mean? How's it? And you're not hearing the next 3 things the doctor says.
Exactly.
We used to have a note taker. My daughters would come in and they'd be a note taker. And the note taker was because this is what the doctor said. Afterwards, on the ride home, my wife and I would be saying, well, the doctor said this, and my daughter be in the backseat going, no, he didn't. I said, what do you mean? That's what he said. No. She pulled out the book and said, he said this, 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 and this.
Awesome.
Okay.
Right.
There has to be an impartial voice or ear in those meetings because feelings will overwhelm you. Information will overwhelm you. If they tell you bad news, it's going to overwhelm you. You're not going to hear anything else. So
Yeah.
I would always say for anyone going through any kind of traumatic or just anything that is really, really going to interrupt your life in any way, to always have somebody else there. Especially guys, they go in by themselves. They think they sort of kind of hear what they say. They interpret it, and then they come home and they tell their wives, nothing's wrong.
Right. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And so the other question was, did you reach out for help? I know you had your daughters, right?
Mhm.
But did you have male friends? We already talked about the support group for like male caregivers.
Which never happened, yes.
Exactly. I guess my question to you is what did you do to take care of yourself well so that you could take care of Maura better? What did you do?
Well, I put on a lot of armor, I have to admit. I wore a heavy suit of armor. I put up really high walls to be able to maintain the integrity of me. There's a reason I tell you this part, because you had said that you have to be the rock and you have to do it yourself. And that's what most guys do. And that's what I was trained to do. And so I never asked for help. I never did ask for help. The way that I did it was I played volleyball one night a week for 2 hours. And no matter what, I always went to that. My wife looked at me and said, with everything going on, you're going to go to volleyball? And I said, yes, it's the only time that I give to myself. That 2 hours, the only thing that matters is this little white ball. Nothing else matters. And I can concentrate on a little white ball. I'm sure it's why some guys golf. I'm sure it's why some guys do other forms of riding a motorcycle or fishing or whatever it is that they do. It's because it's the only time that you can decompress and do it. While my wife was going through it, and especially over her last 5 years, where she declined terribly, I didn't have a lot of outreach to be able to do that. I had started seeing a psychologist that allowed me to be able to kind of bring some of those things to bear.
Mhm.
Here's one of the things that I found is when your wife is leaning over the toilet, losing everything that she's eaten for the past 2 days, it's kind of hard to sit there and say, I'm feeling kind of cramped. I don't have time for myself. I'm feeling kind of put upon here. I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed when she is in a fight for her life.
Yeah.
Most men don't have that outlet. They don't have that ability to talk about those
Mhm.
feelings of overwhelm because their wife is going through life and death. They don't know if their wife is going to survive this.
Yeah.
And so you have that duality of conflicting emotions where you feel really, really selfish about doing anything for
Mhm.
yourself.
It's a vacillating between guilt and self-care. And I see how you're looking at me. I know this because I lived it. I lived through it. And so when you say I didn't ask for help, I didn't ask for help either. But here's the difference. I'm a woman, right? So as a woman, I don't need to find a support group because I have a village of women around the world. And the men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And so my women, they stepped in and they helped me. I didn't have to ask. They didn't say, how are you doing? It was like, what is it that you need? And sometimes they didn't even say, they just sent in things, and some even showed up in person to give that respite. But the other advantage that I had, as well as I was a critical care nurse for over 20 years, so I knew the importance of caregiver burnout, the importance of caregivers taking care of their self, the importance that you can't pour from an empty cup. And when your cup runs down, then now you're just giving off of vapors, right? And also the statistics that supported that most caregivers perish before the person they're taking care of because they're giving it all to that person. And that is just not the way that you can thrive. So I knew those things. And some of the things that I knew, I didn't practice myself. I had to remind myself. But what I did do is I did get my rest, I did eat, and I did take the time, and I just gave myself grace. And when I felt that guilt, I had to just remind myself that I'm filling myself up so that I can pour out again and so that I could advocate from a strong point, right? Because you're not going to run a race without nourishment. And pretty much that's where it is. And so I want to go on record here in this episode and just say for the men that are out there listening, caregivers, we got to do better, guys. We got to do better in checking in on one another. We got to do better, because rocks crumble.
And those are very good points that you're bringing up, Diane. And we as men, we're guilty for a long, long time. We don't ask for help. We don't ask for directions. We'll go in a gas station and continue to go. We'll find our way. It'll be hard, but it could be so much easier if we ask for some help. We still have in our mind to make that decision. Yes, we will take that, or no, we will not, but we don't ask. If we're in pain, we don't talk about it. We don't cry. We just don't. But we're breaking through that. And some of the things that you're sharing with us, Scott, that'll help us break through that chain, break through those barriers that have been with us since birth. We as men, we do this. We hurt ourselves. We make it harder. We should ask for help. And we still have the right to say yes or no. But we should ask for that. Seek out some help, and it will aid us through the battles that we're running through. But some of these battles don't have to be fought at all. We can get through them.
Oh, you're so right. One of the things that my wife and I talked about as she deteriorated 5 years, she had to retire from teaching. And when she did, unfortunately, it reframed who she was. She used to be a teacher. That's how she defined herself. And after she had to retire because she couldn't physically do it anymore, is when she became a cancer patient, when she saw herself as not someone with cancer, but a cancer patient. That identity, that role that she played changed her, and that warrior, that fight came out of her. Yes, she was deteriorating physically, and she spent more and more time in the hospital. But when we talked about those hard questions, right? My parents who were in their 80s didn't have these discussions. And here I am, I'm having it with my wife in her 50s, is how do we want this to end? She had declined. It had gotten into her liver, into her kidneys. They were finding it in other places. She was still going through chemo. One of the hardest times was about 3 weeks before she passed. She went into the doctor's office. We saw him for the very last time. And with tears in her eyes, she said to the doctor, "I'm sorry, I can't do it anymore." And this Jerry Younger is probably one of the most caring doctors I've ever met. And with tears in his eyes, he just said, "You have fought for 20 years. You have nothing to apologize for." And it's the relationship you have with your care team that makes all the difference in the world when you're going through, especially breast cancer. My wife became more and more debilitated. She spent the time in the bedroom. I had a television, I have a rocker. We had the bed that moved up and down. I bought one of those big full-size beds that, goes up and down and all around, basically a modified hospital bed. That was for both of us. And when you're going through that, there is a grieving process. We grieved when she could not teach anymore. We grieved when she had to give up her license. We grieved when she couldn't come downstairs anymore. She was upstairs next to the bathroom in the bedroom. We grieved when she couldn't do those things anymore. When hospice was suggested, I, of course, said, no, we don't need it yet. Yes, we did. So I cleared out the living room, except for the television and the chair and the hospital bed. And I coaxed Maura down the stairs one last time to be able to put her there. I looked at my daughters. One was down in Washington, D.C., and I called her. I said, "You need to come home." She said, "Well, this was on Monday." She said, "Oh, I should be able to get there by Friday." I said, "No, you need to be here tomorrow." Shocked. She showed up, and 10 days later, my wife passed. She was here. And we made the agreement that she would not go to the hospital again. She was going to pass it home around people she loved. And I looked at my daughters and I said, no matter who comes through that door, you let them come in and say goodbye to your mother while she's still alive. I believe that with all my heart, that you do that when you're alive. You have wakes and funerals and everybody says goodbye when they're passed. Brother who hadn't seen her for 5 years came in. Maura hadn't spoken in 24 hours. She hadn't talked. Her brother came in with his daughter. She turned around and said, "Oh, hi, Michael."
Wow.
Mm.
And I'm like, "Hello, who is this?" She spoke for 5 minutes with him and then kind of faded back. And he stayed for about half an hour. And then he put his hand on her and said, I just wanted to say goodbye." "Oh, goodbye. See you." This
Right.
was amazing that she could do this. She went 10 days without food or water. I looked at the hospice nurses and said, "How is this possible?" They shook their head and said, "When it's time, it's time." We've seen people last 30 days without food or water.
Mm.
She fought to the very end. And it was amazing to see that fight within her still. She gave me so many gifts. She was family. She was everything within our family. She was the anchor. She truly, truly was. And my daughters, it's always funny. My wife didn't like piercings and didn't like tattoos. Wasn't going to have it with the girls were in the house, right? So about a year after my wife passed, my daughters got a tattoo on their arm of their mom's signature. I said, "That's a hell of a way to remember her." The one thing she hated, right, was the
Yeah.
tattoos. And they said, "We always wanted her to be right there so we can see her."
Yeah.
The thing about men is they need to not cocoon. I had put on armor so thick, and I wondered why people couldn't get near me. It's because I had so much armor on. I had built walls to keep everybody safe. And after my wife passed, those walls kept everybody else away. I went to therapy for about 5 years after my wife passed, and she never let me get away with anything. She was merciless, thank goodness. But what happened was the armor came off slowly, layer by layer by layer. The walls that I had built up so high that I couldn't go over them and nobody could reach in came down to the point that I could then step over them like a speed bump. It took 5 years of going every week, virtually every week, in order for me to see who I was again. When you give of yourself, caring for somebody else, there isn't a whole lot of room for yourself, not a whole lot of room. However, I would never, ever change a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
The hardest part for me after she passed was finding myself again because I hadn't seen myself in years.
Wow. That
That speaks volumes.
that speaks
Yeah, I can
volumes.
really relate to that.
I'm going to ask you a question. You don't have to answer, but I just feel compelled.
Please.
Your very last words, her very last breath.
I held her hand and told her it was okay. She wasn't there. She wasn't present throughout that last part, but she was fighting throughout all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just told her it was okay. It was time.
Mm-hmm.
She could let go.
Hmm.
It happened very, very quickly. My daughter and I shared time. I would stay up and stay with her until I would go to bed at about 8 o'clock, and I'd wake up about 1 to allow my daughter to go to bed, and I would then stay up the rest of the night. And she woke me up and said, "Dad, you need to come down now. Mom's in tough shape." I called my daughter, her sister, and best friend. My daughter lives half an hour away. Her best friend lived 15 minutes away, and her sister lived 5 minutes away. And from the time I called, none of them got here in time. It happened that quickly. And there was relief that she was not suffering anymore. There was relief that she would not be in pain anymore. But there was the ultimate sadness that it had to end that way.
I want to thank you so much for just opening your heart and sharing with us, Mara. Just opening your heart and just sharing the love, the life, the care. I really want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for the work that you now do with hospice, as well as the work you do in the healing energies and the offering of just a safe space for people to come to and speak with, have those hard conversations, have those conversations that they feel no one else maybe understand, or they just don't feel safe having them with anyone else. Someone who maybe lost a child, someone who maybe lost a spouse. You're able to hold space in both of those areas and be an ear, but not only an ear, but a light. And I want to thank you for that. And I'm going to turn over to Charles to ask his favorite question to you, Charles.
Yes. But before I ask you that question, I want to thank you as well for helping us men out there in lowering the walls and taking off our armor that has been with most all men from day one, to seek out and starting with ourselves to reach out to take that armor off. And I know our listening audience possibly, and I'm most assured they do, have other questions that they would like to ask of you. And what would be a better way for them to get in touch directly with you?
My website, rscottholmes.com, is the easiest way. Send me a message and we can connect.
We'll put that in the narrative. And yes, thank you so much, Scott. Thank you, listeners, for just tuning in. Whew, this was definitely an enriching, powerful, love-filled conversation. Support Scott. Just go see what he's doing in the world. It's rscottholmes.com, and I'll put it in a narrative. Scott, we thank you for your time. It is non-refundable, so we appreciate that. And for those listening, share the episode because this is a powerful way that we can spread the word. And this is a way that we can start those conversations with the men that are listening, the male caregivers. This maybe will even spring forth some men groups around the world that are needed. So thank you for, just sharing and spreading this. Follow us, subscribe if that's what resonates for you. And until next time, Charles and I sign off with one love.
Never a second will I waste, never an opportunity to taste the sweetness of this life.
Thank you for tuning in to the Love Drops podcast. Be sure to follow this podcast and share the love with everyone you know. Until next time, this is Charles and Diane signing off. One love.
Love it conquers all, whether big or small. Love never fails. Love it conquers all.